Morning, everyone. Welcome to the Roundtable discussion, which is a monthly feature of Council for Strategic Affairs. My name is Dr. Adityanji, and I am the President of the Council for Strategic Affairs. We are having today our monthly Roundtable discussion, and those of you who registered using our brochure probably saw this flyer. The topic of today's roundtable discussion is Astro-Politics, Space Militarization, and Space Hegemony. And just to be on record, today is Saturday, October 7, 2023. It is 10 a.m. Eastern Daytime on East Coast of United States, and it is 7:30 p.m. in New Delhi, India. We have two distinguished panelists who are very far apart. One of them is very young, very dynamic, Mr. Arun Ayagari, and the other one is based in India, Dr. K. Siddhartha. So before I introduce the panelists, I will give a brief introduction about the Council for Strategic Affairs. The Council imparts education in the field of international relations. CSA fosters discussion, dialogue, and debate on geopolitical issues. CSA encourages strategic studies in general to raise the level of awareness. CSA condemns terrorism in all its forms worldwide. Council aims to contribute towards world peace and prosperity. The Council does promote people-to-people contacts and track to diplomacy. Just to be on the record, we are registered in United States, in the state of Virginia, as a 501c3 organization. So we are a non-profit organization. Our activities include monthly roundtable discussion that is usually held on second Saturday of each month at 10 a.m. EDT, and that is what we are having today. We do have a monthly guest lecture by a domain expert on fourth Saturday of each month at 10 a.m. We also have a new feature called Strategically Speaking with Dr. Adityanji, in which we invite one-on-one interviews. We also organize symposia, meetings, and conferences. The Council promotes publications of articles on geopolitics and related subjects. We do have a summer internship program for college students, and we have a fellowship training program in strategic studies. And we do have a fellow at this point in time based in Kolkata, India, from St. Xavier College. We have a fellow as our first training fellow. So let me introduce our distinguished panelists, and I will start with Mr. Arun Ayagari. Arun is an editor, and he frequently writes on foreign policy and foreign affairs. He is also fellow at a Washington, D.C. based think tank called American Indo-Pacific Forum. He is deeply passionate about international relations, and to bring to today's subject, he's an advanced pilot, a commercial pilot, a drone pilot. He has served in United States Armed Forces. He's a first lieutenant in the United States Air Force Auxiliary. He's an airplane ground instructor and an airplane instrument instructor. He was awarded Chuck Yeager and Benjamin Davis Awards by the United States Air Force Auxiliary. He's a graduate of South Brunswick and East Brunswick Citizens Police Academy. He is also an active community leader, a certified substitute teacher in the state of New Jersey, and teaches various advanced classes in U.S. history, social studies, advanced math in middle school and high school in New Jersey. He teaches rocket science and aerospace engineering to the cadets in the United States and Air Force. He holds a Master of Science and a Master of Arts in Political Science. And I'm very proud to say that Arun has published on our website, CSA website, and this is Arun in picture, and you will be seeing him very soon if you have not already seen him on the video camera. Our second distinguished panelist is Dr. K. Siddhartha, who is based in New Delhi, India. He is a strategic thinker, he is a geostrategist, he is a knowledge and perception management consultant, he is a trainer of thought leadership, he is advisor to several international and state governments. He is a distinguished earth scientist, an educationist, mentor of at least 1,600 civil servants in India, film personalities, entrepreneurs, policymakers. He has authored 48 books and 116 research articles. And again, I am very proud to say he has appeared before on the CSA platform in various programs. And this is Dr. Siddhartha's picture if you have not already seen him. So we will have a wonderful discussion. A little bit about the topic. I will let the distinguished panelists speak on the topic, but politics of the outer space include space treaties, laws in space, international cooperation and conflict in space exploration, international economics, and hypothetical political impact of any contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. Astropolitics is also known as Astropolitics. It has foundations in geopolitics and is a theory that is used for space in its broadest sense. International cooperation on space projects has resulted in creation of new national space agencies. By year 2005, there were 35 national civilian space agencies, and as of now, the number has increased, and pretty much all the countries, whether small or large, are developing national civilian space programs. So I'll show you some pictures that gives you some ideas about the space weapons and things like that. So this is, you have an ASAT kind of satellite. The topics we are talking about is militarization of space and, of course, weaponization of space. So just to bring the audience to the notion that Star Wars are real, it's not a hypothetical futuristic possibility. The life we live at this point in time is predicated on the commercial use of space. And there's a high possibility that in a larger conflict, larger war, space assets would be targeted. A little bit about housekeeping rules. Please mute yourself to avoid noise interference. Please change your cell phone setting to vibration mode. Please do not interrupt our esteemed panelists when they are speaking. Let them have their say. Only those members of the audience who identify themselves openly will be allowed to ask questions. No anonymous questioners, please. All the questions have to be sent by chat room. Please be precise and specific in asking a question. Please do not send comments in the form of a monologue or a lecture. Lastly, we are recording this program and it is being simultaneously live streamed on our YouTube channel, and it will be available in its entirety on our website. So without further ado, I'm going to start inviting our panelists to give their opening statement. We are having slight different format today because one of our speakers has laryngitis. So I don't want to extend the duration to 1.5 hours that is usual. We will try to finish within 60 minutes. So I will go forego the moderated discussion, and after the opening statements, we'll take directly questions from the audience. May I invite Mr. Arun Nayagari as the first panelist? Kindly unmute yourself, sir. The platform is yours. We welcome you. Namaskar.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Adityanji. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. I hope my background lighting is okay. I tried to do that for the first time. So first of all, thank you for inviting me to this esteemed panel and esteemed organization as well. I've seen a lot of work you guys have been doing. Very proud of what you guys do. That includes offering internship to the youth or people involved. So thank you very much for that. That's a great service to the IR community. So I was looking at the topic, which highlights space hegemony, space militarization, and astropolitics. The word astropolitics is it's very painful to me. I say that because as if the politics was not enough on planet Earth, we're extending politics even to space, which is thousands of miles from here, we're still extending politics even to space. Now that's a big disappointment, and we're also carrying the hegemony to space as well. So on that topic, before we delve deeper, I would like to explore the words in the title a little bit. What's hegemony? What's space? What's air power? Hegemony, speaking from international relations perspective, it need not be assigned a negative connotation because there's nothing wrong in any country's aspirations to become to get to the top of the league. I don't think that's a negative connotation. However, if we go back in time, if you look at before we go to space hegemony, if you look at the hegemony on the Earth, starting from Cold War, right? U.S. has been the most advanced and still is the most advanced and most industrialized economic power till date. Although there was a Soviet Union aspect until 1991, there was a Cold War between United States and Soviet Union, 91, and after 91, the disintegration, the hegemony mostly moved or tilted towards United States. So in a way, we can say United States is a political hegemon. Again, that's not a negative connotation. So that's on Earth. Now talking about the word space. Space, the issue with space is the space itself, the word space, there's no border or limits to space. One cannot draw a concrete line between atmosphere, which is kind of thermosphere, and space. It gradually gets into space. So there's no concrete line. So the reason why I mentioned that is without a concrete boundary, even if there are concrete boundaries on Earth, there still is infighting on the front of territorial integrity, right? That's after the lines have been drawn. Now imagine if there are no lines drawn at all in space, there would be so much commotion, so much chaos. And that exactly is a problem with space. Although there is a line called, I'm going to get a little scientific here for about 30 seconds. Although there's a line called a Kármán line, which has been mostly accepted as a border between atmosphere and space, because space is all vacuum, technically. So that has been established. It's about 62 miles, around 60 miles above the Earth's surface. So that is Kármán line. That is what has been agreed as a border between space and atmosphere. So now there's another space which also has no boundary, which is a cyberspace. So I should say there's two kinds of space: the cyberspace and outer space. There's no specific boundaries on these. So it's an open field, right? And open to hegemony, open to domination, open to race, open to militarization, weaponization, whatever you want to call it. It's always open. Now, there's another topic I want to talk about very quickly for about 30 seconds is the air power. So the power of the air in the air has not been realized by many countries, especially United States, until about Second World War. Because until Second World War, at least United States had an Army Air Force. There was no separate branch of Air Force. So the power of air has not been realized by the country. So there's the Army Air Force. And then 1947, we established the United States Air Force. And then in 2019, under Trump administration, we established the United States Space Force. The point I'm trying to make with this is if you see there's a gradual progress in terms of realizing the potential of air power. And United States, although late in the game, it still established Space Force, unlike China, which established its strategic force in 2015 itself. Now, so we spoke about space, we spoke about hegemony, now we spoke about air power. So we should talk about space race. And this is, again, this makes me very uncomfortable. So that's not a place to race. So space is not a place to race, right? So that's not a place to establish territorial hegemony or spatial hegemony. So this, if I go back in time a little bit to 1953, when Dwight Eisenhower was the president of the United States, he gave the very famous Atoms for Peace speech, right? So that marked a significant milestone in terms of establishing IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, and also the Treaty on Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. And then in 1957, which I would say is officially was the beginning of space race, when Russia, or I should say Soviet Union at the time, launched Sputnik, right? This was when the United States woke up in a way and said, you know what, Russia is taking control and we should do something about it. We being United States and the world should do something about it. And then came in 1958, the UNUSA, we call it, United Nations Office on Outer Space Affairs. It promoted international cooperation. And then 1959, peaceful Committee on the Peaceful Use of Outer Space. 1967, the landmark Outer Space Treaty, which is a legally binding treaty. And then we had rescue agreements, liability conventions, registration convention, Moon Agreement, and things like that. But those are all the treaties and agreements. And then in 2015, the elephant in the room, China, the Chinese PLA established a strategic support force, like I said before, and then followed by the Russian Federation the same year. And 2019, France and the United States established a Space Command and a Space Force, respectively. And then 2020, there's Artemis Accords. Now, the reason why I mention this is to give an idea as to how the space race has been evolving. Initially, it started as space initiatives by each nation state, and eventually, if you look at it holistically, it turned out into a space race. Now, why is this a race? There's nothing wrong in working towards the good of mankind. It becomes a race when one country is trying to overtake another in terms of technology. So that's not a competitive race anymore. That's more to establish a hegemony. So now that is what's making this a space race. Also, to add to the mix is a commercial element. So, SpaceX by Mr. Elon Musk. So there has been a commercial involvement as well in terms of sending human missions and other missions, other spatial missions to either moon or other celestial objects. So commercial sector is also playing a role. And one other, quickly, I want to point before I finish my introductory remarks, is about the spending. So if you look at it, the spendings which are relevant to this conversation are spending on space budget, right, as a factor or as a percentage of the federal budget, and defense spending as percentage of GDP. These are the two parameters, I would say, which would help establish a nation state's or state's seriousness in terms of space dominance. Unfortunately, if you take the example of the United States, the defense spending of the United States as a share of GDP has been traditionally falling, except for the Apollo mission in the 60s, and then a little bit in about 1980s, I guess, when the percentage went up. It's over 4% or 5%. Now they are close to 2.5% to 3%. So the percentage share of GDP of the defense spending has been consistently dropping. And so is the investment in the NASA share as a percentage of federal budget. So the countries are waking up now. Thanks to China, it's creating a sense of competitive spirit, not positively amongst other nation states, but nation states are waking up and realizing the potential of spatial investment, both from a government perspective and also from a commercial perspective. So that is something I would like to highlight, and I'd like to stop here. I'm sorry, I didn't keep track of time. I guess I was doing okay with the time. Thank you.
Excellent presentation. Excellent opening statement by Arun Hayagari, who dealt with various historical vicissitudes of the space race and the current scenario where we are at this point in time in 2023, that yes, from space faring, we have come to a state of space weaponization, space militarization. And yes, we are discussing space hegemony, whatever connotation that word may have, because the behavior of the nations is governed by their past behaviors. So if they behave in one domain in a particular way, it is very likely the same nation will behave in the same way in a different domain. And that's why concern about the space hegemony. I will withhold my further comments, and I'm going to invite our second distinguished panelist, Dr. K. Siddhartha, who has graciously consented to be here. I may just tell our audience that he is suffering from laryngitis, so there may be some problems with his voice, but he has been gracious enough to, continue with his presentation. Dr. Siddhartha, kindly unmute yourself, and the platform is yours, sir. Dr. Siddhartha. Dr. Siddhartha, can you hear us? Dr. Siddhartha. Let me call him.
Able to visualize that part. I don't know where my picture is gone.
Okay, so your camera is not on and your mic is muted. Kindly unmute yourself. Host, can we unmute?
Is it okay?
Yes, we can hear you now. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
I hope that will be okay, right? I hope that's going to be okay right now.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And as of course, I begin by thanking you, Dr. Adityanji. You have been such an inspiration to a great number of people by bringing up topics which are of a solid relevance to the world geopolitics. And thank you, my panelists, for having given a brief introduction about the evolution of a space hegemony and a space race as well. I'm going to begin with whatever India did has been a watershed in the entire of space politics and watershed in also what we call it as a cosmopolitics, both of them. The landing of Chandrayaan-3 seems to have completely altered and changed the geopolitics and the narrative part of it as well. Of course, it has been a technological aspect. It has been, of course, economic aspect. But other than Chandrayaan-3, they have launched Astrosat, Aditya. Now, with it, India is in the threshold of climbing the next step of technological ladder. And That is how exactly it is going to be embracing the multilateral joint space mission. Now, and that's not all. India had already entered into an agreement with Artemis. Imagine this is significant because we have to imagine that it was United States at one point of a time that never transferred the technology of a cryogenic engine, and India did it itself. Third part has been, of course, the joint mission with which India has moved ahead in this case. Now, even if you forget about all of those things, space has dawned a completely new dimension in a variety of ways. If you think there is the way India has been able to act, and I'm singling out India largely because India's space program is for civilian purpose. It didn't begin like that of a military purpose. And the reason why good number of countries will be dominating space or having a space hegemony is because of a variety of factors. Now consider first the technological aspect. There are two technologies that seem to have completely changed the complexion of who is the main power in space. India has taken such type of payloads on Chandrayaan 3 and also with this orbiter last year that in 2019 the orbiter that is still going to be there. Now these are type of payloads are actually a technological marvel. It catapults India to a level where not too many countries have gone. That's number one. Second technological aspect has very soft landing ability. And mind it was not on the equator of moon that India landed. It was in a super hostile environment in the southern pole, and that too, it was able to land it safely. And that soft landing means that India can now land on moon. India can land on Mars. India can land on almost anything thereafter because this was the type of technology that is it perfected. Now, space has become significant for India and for the rest of the world, largely also because of first the use of the ceramics, because it has to have a heat shield, and this is what has been the greatest spin-off with respect to space. Now, consider also that Chandrayaan had retro-reflector. And when we say that it has a retro-reflector, that means anyone can go on to locate where Chandrayaan 3 is resting right now. And that is not only a small thing at all, because maybe after 5 years, 10 years, 16 years, 60 years, someone goes and finds that Chandrayaan that was the place, Shakti point where Chandrayaan landed. From perspective of warfare, just imagine that the new warfare that we are going to be introducing into the world is going to be cognitive warfare. And space will be the central point in this case. That is going to be a direct war. There will be another direct war that is going to be taking place. And of course, we understand which are the countries who will be able to do it so. And that is giving a fake GPS signal to anything that is going to be on the ground and even to airplanes as well. And that has a devastating potential if someone wants to disrupt it. With so much amount of junk where more and more satellites are coming up and more satellites are spending their entire life in that region, things have become even worse because this space junk is going to be used by someone as a weapon. And when we are going to be talking about a warfare, this is not where the warfare ends. We must go on to be having a good amount of knowledge about space, largely because we need to protect ourselves from the solar wind. We need to protect ourselves from the magnetic storm. And we need to protect ourselves from anyone who will go on to have a big parabolic mirror on the moon. They will be able to accumulate and they will be able to convert it into a laser bomb, and that will go on to become a major problem for all the inhabitants of the earth. It will give an absolute advantage to anyone who is able to do it so. Geopolitically, what has happened is that in just about 6 months of a time, a lot of things have gone for a complete change. India entering into an accord with Artemis, India entering into an accord with people who are going to be taking them onto space. That's not all. Imagine, United States, it is able to deal with United States almost on an equal footing. Now that means that India's time as far as space power is concerned has heralded, it has come in this case. And space, we are going to space essentially on the predict that water is going to be found in that place. Now, I'm going to clear this cloud. This water is not going to be in such a form which you can go into. It's not like a pond in that place. It's not like solid blocks of ice in that place. This water is going to be in a completely different form, and that is in hydroxide forms, which can be used by rockets to break this water into many forms and use hydrogen separately as a fuel. So Moon will go on to become a stopover point for going into or venturing into outer space. India has been able to master that part. India has been able to play that part as well. Now, Moon is going to be another planet from where deep space is going to be easily probed, because this is one of the spaces where going to any place in deep space will become a child's play after some amount of time. Now, what it will do is that because we are going to be entering into deep space and we can go to study it, we can go to use it, or rather misuse it. That means that even if a country doesn't go on to some that it has a high type of technology, it will go on to become a major threat of thoughts. Probing deep space is significant, not only from an economic viewpoint. It is significant because we never know what the other country has got its hands on and in what manner, in what a nefarious design manner it can go on to use it. Moon has a lot of helium-3, and just to say it, not semantically, but to give you an analogy, one bag full of helium-3 from Moon, what we can go on to do is that we can go on to change the complexion of the energy requirement all in all here or there. And to top it all, we do going to be having an economic potential, and that is going to be in the form of first is tourism. Tourism may or may not go on to give that desired amount of a revenue, but then this revenue part is increasing day by day, and it's now $100 billion industry, and human beings are going to be one component out of it. And that's not all. India will go on to become a major player because what India is going to be concentrating on is launching the satellites at a minimal cost. Not only that, India will be able to launch small satellites, nano satellites, and small satellites and nano satellites can be manufactured en masse. With such type of a cheap program, what India will go on to do is that it will go on to create a whole of the African countries as market. And not only that, the way that we destroyed, or we are in the process of destroying the American hegemony in this case, has been by giving COVID vaccines to imagine 135 countries India provided. And if India is going to do the same thing to Latin American countries, to African countries in this place, how much amount of a goodwill it will be able to generate. Now, having said that, we also know that it is going to be a major mineral reservoir on the Moon, particularly with respect to all those type of minerals, which we can go to use it for semiconductors, for a space industry and whatnot. With this type of accomplishment, with this type of activity, and with this type of achievement, India has actually shown its strength. And that's not all. It is this strength that some time back China used to show, and now we have, of course, with a variety of components, we have been able to show this type of strength. That doesn't end here. India has been able to create a new type of economy, that is goodwill economy, trust economy. And when we say so, we are actually talking about the cooperation that India has extended to a variety of countries. And that is what exactly has the potential to bring about a complete change in astro-politics. African countries are going to be used for that purpose. Latin American countries are going to use, and of course, India will go on to use the space in its own manner and dictating its own terms, largely because it is cheap and it is actually a space economy of India is a technological marvel. This is what exactly is the type of scenario that you can go to present to the whole of the world, and the whole of the world knows that. And with a launch that is going to be after Aditya, that is Gaganyaan, India will actually catapult itself into a space power, and single-handedly India will be able to change a lot of geopolitical perspective of the world. That was from my side, Dr. Aditya.
Thank you, Dr. Siddhartha, for giving Indian perspective. May I request you to try to put your camera on? I didn't want to interrupt your speech. Everyone heard it well, but we would like to see you. So if you can turn your camera on, that will be wonderful. I've been asking people to send some questions in the chat room, but no questions have come. So I will start with a question, and that question will go to our first panelist, Arun Ayagari. Arun, you actually dated the issue about, the space hegemony concerns from 2015 when China started its, space command, strategic space command. But don't you think that the concern about this space hegemony started in 2007 when China conducted a kinetic kill ASAT test? And for 2 weeks, Chinese government was totally tight-lipped and did not give any information to the entire world whether they did conduct a kinetic kill ASAT test or not. To my mind, actually, the concern about space weaponization, space militarization, and space hegemony started actually in 2007 when China conducted the kinetic kill ASAT test and did not share any information with the rest of the world, at least for 2 weeks. And in fact, 2 years, for 2 successive years prior to that, they had failed attempt to conduct an ASAT test. Arun, your comments. Arun, please unmute yourself.
Yeah. So can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for that comment. I did not want to delve deeper during introduction, but I'm glad you brought it up. Just to clarify what Dr. Adityanji just mentioned, you used some technical words. I just want to clarify that for our audience. Use the words called kinetic and weapon. So what happens is ASAT, to just expand on what ASAT is as well. ASAT is anti-satellite weapons. So the goal is to make them dysfunctional. I use that word carefully because it could be either destruction or make them dysfunctional. That's why I use that word. So what this ASAT, in other words, anti-satellite weapons do is that these are kind of space weapons, right? There are two types of space weapons. One is kinetic and one is non-kinetic. Kinetic weapons have the capability to destroy objects both in space and on Earth. Here we're talking about space. So the Earth to space, ASAT missiles. So all the states with great power ambitions, like United States, Russia, China, even India, they all possess these capacities, capabilities, and they did test them repeatedly, right? And there's another thing called non-kinetic weapon. Non-kinetic weapon it is still a weapon, but it does not destroy the object, in this case satellites, but it uses things like lasers, jammers, electromagnetic radiations, and other microwave radiations to either disturb the objects in space without direct contact. That's why it's non-kinetic. Again, we all know, going back to science, kinetic is nothing but motion, right? So these are two types of weapons. Now that I've expanded what those mean, I would like to comment on Dr. Adityanji's comment, which, yeah, you're right. Yes, it started in 2007. Actually, to be theoretical, the fear psychosis started way back. even before 2007, 1960s, which is why we started the Outer Space Treaty and things like that for peaceful and civilian purposes, non-nuclear civilian purposes only. But to comment on that 2007 test, yes, that's right. China carried out an anti-satellite destruction test using ASATs. This created not just fear in the spatial community, but also it created a large amount of space debris. This is kind of alluding to what Dr. Siddhartha mentioned before, is the space debris. And this met with intense international criticism by several states. Now, this is not to say that US and Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union, did not conduct tests in the past, but there were never these careless attacks, right? But China, we all know, under the leadership of Xi Jinping, it's been very aggressive, very combative, and non-compromising. So as part of that asymmetric warfare, yes, this has been condemned by several states in the world. But again, even countries like India did conduct these tests, but nothing at the scale of these ramifications or consequences. So yes, China did carry out, and that needs to be strongly condemned, because the problem is, one is it's dangerous, like I said before, and also the problem is the space debris. Subject to correction, but I think there were close to 20,000 or 25,000 pieces of space debris as of a couple of years ago. I don't remember the exact number. So this needs to be arrested. Space debris, just because we do not live there, does not mean we create a we create a ruckus there. So any tests, this is why the international community, especially United States, through Artemis Accord as an extension to Outer Space Treaty, has been highlighting the civilian and peaceful use of space, because that has a potential to potentially disrupt navigation, communication, reconnaissance, observation, and other spatial facilities. So yes, China did create a commotion when it did that, and it has been strongly condemned. But again, the problem is, Dr. Adityanji, there's only so much you could do. These treaties, these agreements, these accords, they only help so much. If I don't like to use the word rogue, but if a non-conforming, that's probably a better word. If a member state, I should say, of a treaty decided to be non-conforming, that there's nothing any state can do. For example, China, I'm beating a dead horse here. China has been repeatedly compromising on the maritime integrities and breaking UNCLOS, United Nations Conventions on Laws of Sea, has constantly been breaking UNCLOS conventions. All that's part of United Nations. It's a member state of United Nations and also Security Council. So there's only so much we could do. So yeah, to answer your question, yes, it did.
Thank you, Arun. That was a very elaborate and very detailed answer to my question. And it was very relevant for our audience because, yes, it is a highly technical subject, and part of our roundtable discussion is raising the level of awareness. The threat of space weaponization, space wars, and space hegemony is no longer theoretical, it's real, because all our lives depend upon satellites at this point in time. So that is very, very important. I am going to direct my next question to Dr. Siddhartha. Dr. Siddhartha, you talked about, moon being rich in helium-3, and there are talks about, exploitation of mineral extraction from the moon. And there is a little bit of concern again about China's role. So on one hand, China has started an international lunar research alliance, try to exploit the, mineral wealth of moon. And on the other hand, China has taken a very negative view of India's Chandrayaan-3 landing and is officially disputing saying that India landed the, Vikram lander and then the rover on the south pole of moon, Chinese scientists have said that is not true. Dr. Siddhartha, what is your response to this Chinese creation of a controversy? Because it may have some astro-political implications. I'm not saying geopolitical, it may have astro-political implications. Dr. Siddhartha.
Yes, thank you. You have put the question well, rather, Dr. Aditya. See, I agree with you that China is going to be the main trouble created here because there are a lot of things that they're going to do it in a stealth manner. Now, imagine the psyche. There is the overall psyche of the Chinese. If the Chinese are hell bent on let's say, picking up a war with you, what they will going to do is that they will first go on to pollute the information level. Then they are going to inserting their own narrative. Then they will go on to, if it is a democracy, then they will say to the citizens, and that is how they manipulate it. That is, sit in a dharna, be squatting on the road, do anything that will go on to, that is going to help you defend the power to speak or the power of free expression. Chinese are best in exploiting everything that you have good into and converting everything into bad. This is what exactly they go on to do for narrative building. Now, when we come on to China, Chinese are also very good in creating a doubt and seeding a doubt in the minds of the people. Whether it is maybe sometime back, one class, it's going to be Pangong Solo Lake in India, or it is going to be any aspect, any form of it. Chinese are almost mastered this art of building a narrative, giving a narrative, seeding doubts, creating doubts, and not only that, that is taking it extensively as well. So, having said that, we understand that the main concern for us, for the humanity, is that they are Chinese, and as we're going to say so, why? To begin with, I'll not go on to point in a racial manner, but Chinese are so poker faced, you hardly see an expression. Whether they are angry, whether they are happy, whether they are very, very joyous, we hardly come to know of it. The second part is that is Chinese are able to, they're able to plan it, they're able to reverse plan it in a variety of ways. It's like if they want some type of a street fight to happen on the streets of India, then they'll approach in a completely different manner. Now, this is a side gap. Chinese are going to be landing themselves on the moon, taking some minerals, and do not know what they will go on to do, what they did with rare earth elements. That is, at one point of a time, Toshiba was one of the largest manufacturers of a screen. That is the screen that we're going to see on a mobile, on a TV, and so on. And Chinese has a hegemony that was they're controlling 98% of a rare earth elements. Now, they may go on to find something productive on the surface of the moon, in the soils of moon, in the as a mineral resource, and they will start using it in such a manner. And again, seeding a narrative. You will also imagine that Chinese are the one who have built up, it's almost like a space station in Patagonia, in Argentina. Now, one can easily go to gauge why is it that the Chinese are doing it so? Because they have their eyes on Antarctic. They may have, and as far as the number of satellites that have been sent to the moon, not more around the moon, in space, the number of satellites, India is no match for the number of satellites that the Chinese have sent. And of course, they will go to explore all the type of differences that Indians have with them. I'm sorry to call this a difference. Indians are very variable. They are very diverse. The Chinese interpret this diversity as a difference. They interpret it as a discord. And that is what exactly is a true narrative building. The Chinese will go here, there, everywhere to do it so. But then we do want to think that in the last 9 years or so, we have seen how is it that Indian diplomatic triumph has taken place and to what an extent. India is actually able to convince all these countries and even not all of these countries that are on their side. With the COVID vaccination, India has built a new type of economy, a new type of an ecosystem in the world that is related to goodwill, that is related to trust. So Chinese, despite the fact that whatever they're going to say, that we have not landed on moon surface or we have not landed near to the South Pole or far away from the South Pole. Now, how many people are able to process this information of the Chinese? Being from that field, being from that domain, I know that it's not exactly on the South Pole, but of course, somewhat away from that. And that is what exactly is a matter of explanation if someone hears that. So we must be ready for Chinese inserting a variety of type of narratives from moon, from space, and they're going to impose it on humanity. And that is the trick. We have known this trick, and the whole of the world will come to know of it. And you're not going to see it as a danger. The danger lies somewhere else. But then that was the answer to your question, Dr. Ajay.
Thank you, Dr. Siddhartha. We have a question in the chat room from Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor, and either of the panelists can address this question. Besides the ongoing and proposed collaboration between US and India in space, what is your dream list and vision for joint work in space in the next 20 years for both India and US? Either of the panelists can answer that.
Can I just go to add something to it? See,
sure.
India is a member of Quad. Now, being a member of Quad, it empowers India and initiate it as well. That is with Australia, with United States, with itself, that is, and Japan. That it is in a perfect position to build a new space station. Think of it. If you require technology, of course, United States is going to be there. All the type of cutting-edge technology. If it is that you require steel to build such type of a space station, Australia is going to be there as a part of it. If you want to do it very easily, very cheaply, India itself is going to be a part of it. And then when you require a cutting-edge technology, you have Australia. So India has a role to play as far as the Quad is concerned and taking it to the next level. That's number one. Second is space for all of us is a domain that has not been completely explored. And now what India can go to do with this goodwill, and I'm talking about African countries, I'm talking about Latin American countries, I'm talking about UAE as well, all of them. That is, there must be some type of a space accord which should be linked to a lot of other aspects. Like we have one on the Deep Sea Bed Treaty, that is the International Seabed Authority, ISA. It has to be on those type of lines, so that anyone who has a nefarious design does not start misusing moon and does not start even misusing all the debris that are going to be there, because Chinese are actually very well established in converting any advantage that humanity has into a weapon. Remember, you must be remembering what they did with chestnut forest, Canada. That is the cycle that was of lynx and chestnut. That was the one that was broken by the Chinese. Canadians realized much later on, but then Canadians and Canadians, the way they are behaving right now, you understand how much amount of thinking that they, or whether they at all give any amount of thinking there. The Chinese are a menace in this case, largely because of their ability to convert anything advantageous into something that is really harmful.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Siddhartha. Arun, your response to Ambassador Kapoor's question.
Sure. Like Ambassador Kapoor said, I would like to highlight on the word dream. Okay, like to emphasize the word dream. So dream list is, now this might be counterintuitive, but I think we need to bring, especially, I mean, in terms of any spatial agreements or spatial contracts or spatial conversations, I think we need to bring China on board. It's very important, and this can be done. And China and India, that's my dream list, can be part of at least a spatial agreement, not one belt, one road, not the India, Middle East, EU road. I'm talking about a spatial accord. This can be possible by using the words like sustainability, right? avoiding spatial debris, and because balance of power, and also we can put pressure from the international community on China or any other state which tries to be a rogue state, to be honest. So I think it is possible because this is in the best interest of mankind. And to allude to what you said before, Dr. Adityanji, I know you're joking when you said astropolitics, not geopolitics. But what I would say is the balance of power on planet Earth is directly proportional to balance of power in space. That's what I strongly believe. So that balance of power carries over to space as well. And also, as part of this dream list, what's stopping us? Just like we have sustainable development goals set forth by United Nations, 17 sustainable development goals. Why can't we have another SDG? Instead of sustainable development goals, how about having spatial sustainable development goals? Now, I understand all the 17 goals do not apply to the space. However, we can pick and choose, thereby putting pressure through international community on any states which do not conform to any of the dream clauses as part of that dream contract. So yeah, that's what I would say. Yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to say.
There's another question / comment from the audience, and I think it has partly been answered by Arun already.
Yep.
It's
take that.
with UN failing to stop Russia or more so China by putting economical sanctions for flouting laws often, is there any way to stop countries like China from misusing their sovereign power in terms of space hegemony? And this is exactly what Arun was talking. Arun, you want to say anything more on that?
Yeah, I just saw that question. So one thing which comes to my mind is force legal binding. So what I mean is we cannot, unless something is legally binding, we cannot force any nation state to follow any specific protocol. Sometimes despite being part of a legal binding contract, there's still a compromise on territorial / maritime sovereignty and integrity. So there's nothing to stop them from doing the same in space as well. Like I said, and also somebody mentioned sanctions. Honestly, we've seen this before. We placed several, we meaning the international community, the world, placed several sanctions on Myanmar, on Iran. So I do not think placing sanctions all the time would be an effective solution, holistically speaking. So I think putting international pressure from the international community and convincing the nation states, I think that as cheesy as that sounds, I think that's the best path forward to handle these situations. Yeah.
Since the discussion is veering around behavior of a particular country of concern, I think it is appropriate that we discuss what could happen in future, what could happen in 50 years. And Arun, in your opening statement, you had said that the space is limitless. You cannot divide the space. But it could be debatable if somebody uses, lawfare. China has doctrine of 3 warfares, and one of them is lawfare. You know how quickly using so-called historical claims as the basis for converting South China Sea into China's personal lake, starting with 9-dash line to now 10-dash line, disputing the sovereignty, the UNCLOS, EEZs of other countries in that area. China has changed the narrative. Now think of it in 50 years' time. The world's first post office in space is owned by China. The name of Chinese permanent space station is Tiangong. Tiangong is heavenly palace, the divine kingdom. The middle kingdom has a divine ruler, and it has a divine claim on the entire space because it was the first one to have a heavenly palace. And I'm not being facetious. It's just the mentality of a nation that you create small historical claims, and based on those historical claims, you challenge the sovereignty and you assert the hegemony. You know, the 9-dash line is not a new creation. It's been decades since it was, enunciated and proclaimed by China as China's claim in South China Sea. So beware what will happen in 50 years when China will say, we were the first one to establish a post office in space. We were the first one to have a heavenly place in the space, and you have to follow our diktats. In case China's comprehensive national power on this planet exceeds that of United States. Any comments, Arun?
Right. First of all, the word, anytime somebody uses the phrase 9-dash line, I just go into stitches because there's no logic. So somebody asked me, and I was teaching, giving a lecture on this, what's the concept behind 9-dash line? There's no logic. There's literally 9 dashes in that line, which PRC drew. That's why it's a 9-dash line. So now it's a 10-dash line. There's also 11-dash line. So now to answer your question, Dr. Adityanji, what's to stop them creating a 1,000-dash line and draw that somewhere in space and release, just like they release South Tibet, Arunachal Pradesh, and other places, and claim them to be part of PRC, People's Republic of China. There's nothing stopping them. And I say that with a lot of pain because you use the word, I wrote it down, challenge sovereignty. That's an oxymoron, because if there is sovereignty, how can anybody challenge it? Right now, this is, like I said before, this is on Earth itself, when there are pre-established, historically drawn lines establishing sovereignty. Now in space, first of all, there's not even a border between atmosphere and space. So it's easy to establish dominance. It's easy to establish perceptional sovereignty, especially by a state which has a lot of history in doing so, in this case, PRC. So there's nothing stopping from doing that. Another word he used is history. Again, I teach history. I'm a big fan of that. But again, history is not a true reflection of future in every aspect, every single time. Sometimes it could change. If you look at US-China relations, they had strained relations. And who would have thought the 1972 would happen when Henry Kissinger totally recycled, refreshed, refurbished the relation between the US and China. And now again, it's back to tensions, right? And Henry Kissinger lately visited China a few months ago. He got a royal treatment. Even Joe Biden, I don't think, got such a treatment. So despite being president. So the point I'm trying to make is history, I mean, not necessarily true reflection, but I do not. Now, again, this has consequential ramifications, because if PRC claims sovereignty in an uncharted territory. Now, again, no offense, but even a country like Burkina Faso, which has its own civil problems going on, civil unrest, it can claim sovereignty, right? All it needs is, well, actually, that's not even needed, but still, for all ethical purposes, all it needs is membership in the United Nations to claim sovereignty on a piece of area, I shouldn't say land, in space. So to answer your question, there's nothing stopping us from doing that. And just another quick comment. We are okay to the point you mentioned before about mining in Moon. It's okay to explore, but it's not okay to exploit. There's a difference between the two. So we should explore, not exploit. Same thing with asteroids, right? So people, scientists are contemplating about water extraction from asteroids as a pit stop, right, to extract water. So that's something I wanted to comment on that. But again, to answer your question, there's nothing stopping anybody, especially someone like PRC, from making any claims on a imaginary place in space.
So there's one last question from the audience, and this is from Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor. with the current state of politics and the economic slowdown in China, how does this impact their space future? Either of the panelists can answer that.
Yeah, I can quickly take a stab at it.
Okay.
Again, I saw the comment of Ambassador Kapoor before. He's talking about slowdown. Now, again, I think he's referring to the deflation going on in China right now. I think that's what he's referring to. Again, Ambassador Kapoor, I would like to look at it from I respect your opinion. I would like to look at it from a holistic standpoint. Like I said before, nothing is permanent. There's no permanent friends, no permanent foes, especially in geopolitics, right? So I do not. I think this is just a temporary slowdown. But again, yeah, I don't see that much of an impact. I would like to see the holistic picture. Again, I'm a big proponent of teamwork. So, like I said before, I think all countries should work in unison, at least when it comes to space. So, yeah, I do not really, unless there is a significant shift in the balance of power. If somebody is as successful, I use the word successfully challenged America's geopolitical hegemony, unless that radical paradigm shift happens in balance of power, otherwise I think these are all tentative. I hope I answered the question.
Thank you, Arun, and thank you, Dr. Siddhartha, both for your expert comments and participation in questions and answers. So one model of space cooperation is cooperative and altruistic. And that model is actually proposed by India. When India built a satellite, launched it, it's called South Asia Satellite. And it is not for benefit of India, it's for the benefit of the entire countries in the, I would use Indian subcontinent. Whether some countries want to take benefit of that or not is a different issue. But yes, the smaller countries are getting benefit. Totally outstanding, selfless service at India's cost, building the satellite for communications as well as launching it and keeping it operational. So that is the model, an altruistic model that may be part of a true international vision in space collaboration. Another could be much more confrontational. So for sake of our panelists and our audience, in United Nations General Assembly, there was an open-ended working group on reducing space threats, OEWG, that was brought in United Nations General Assembly to reduce and minimize the threats and to promote, civilian cooperation for the benefits of humankind. And two countries opposed it. One of them is Russia, second is China. So for all practical purposes, we can hope that, we can, do the spacefaring, space utilization in a cooperative manner, but the current geopolitical fault lines will also be seen in the space. At this point in time, there are 4 countries in the world that have ASAT capabilities. One is United States. Second is the Russia or former Soviet Union and its inheritor. Third is China, and 4 is India. There is an ASAT ban treaty proposed by United States. So far, 7 countries have signed it. Again, it's the same fault lines that Russia and China say that it is inadequate and it takes basically the Western notion or Western narrative into consideration. So we have a lot of questions to, sort out. And one roundtable discussion is not possibly enough to take care of those. As I said that because of the, special situation with one of our panelists, I would not extend this roundtable discussion further. My heartfelt thanks to Dr. K. Siddhartha, who chose to join despite having acute laryngitis. He's taking antibiotics. And Mr. Arun Nayagiri. We would love to have both of you come back again on a similar or a different topic. I'm also thankful to our audience. Oh, it's a very dry subject. Nobody talks about astropolitics or space hegemony, but I think these are realistic strategic notions that we should be discussing to avoid future conflict, because at this point in time, human civilization is utilizing space in day-to-day life. And anything that disrupts that will be disaster for human civilization. So our audience took time on a Saturday morning and a very dry subject. Hats off to them, and hats off to Team CSA. Mr. Ripudaman Pachori, Mr. Rajiv Verma, the pillars of support for Council for Strategic Affairs, because their background work keeps these discussions, keep the distinguished lectures going on month by month. Totally selfless service. So my hats off to my team, because they make it happen. I don't. I just organize it, but they do the groundwork. So with those thanks, we will be possibly meeting for a distinguished lecture on October 28th. That is the fourth Saturday. But thanks to everyone, and namaskar.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Aditya. Thank you.
The recording would be available on YouTube as well as on our website, and I'm going to close the meeting. Thanks a lot, everyone.